Namaste and welcome to everyone to Global Focus. Once again, we are here with an exciting topic. Global trade moved like a clockwork, interconnected, interdependent, and largely predictable. But then came Trump administration's tariff war, and everything changed. America turned inward, global alliance trembled, and economic fault line deepened. Welcome to Global Focus. In today's episode, we unpack the deeper implications of this seismic shift, not just for America or China, but for India and the world. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome a distinguished voice in strategic affairs and global economics, Dr. Adityanjee. Dr. Adityanjee is the President for Council for Strategic Affairs. With decades of experience in policy analysis, international relations, and a deep understanding of India's evolving role on the global stage. He brings clarity to the chaos and vision to the uncertainty. Dr. Adityanjee, welcome to the podcast. We are honored to have you with us.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sinha, for inviting me once again on Global Focus platform. And I'm very pleased to be here to discuss this pressing global issue on US tariffs on almost all the countries. So let's have a discussion on this topic.
So nice of you, sir. So my first question to you, how did Trump's tariff war reshape the global trade narrative, especially among the US elite and competitors? So what's your comment?
It's too soon to set up a narrative. Remember that he announced wide-ranging tariffs on April 2nd, which he called Tariff Liberation Day
Correct.
for United States.
Right.
And basically it involved 10% tariffs on all imports to US from pretty much all the countries, including some uninhabited islands, which is surprising that there are no people, but he's putting tariffs. So that's funny. But on top of that basic 10% tariffs, he calculated some formula based on bilateral trade between countries and put series of tariffs. So I'll give you an example that he put 34% of tariffs on China, put 27% tariffs on India, and then reduce it to 26% as a discount because India and US are discussing bilateral free trade area. Similarly, there were tariffs on other countries. Surprisingly, there were 17% tariffs on Israel. There were tariffs on Vietnam, Japan, South Korea, pretty much every trading nation, the United States under Trump imposed tariffs. And what is happening that some of the countries are announcing counter tariffs. So in relation to tariffs on China, China just announced yesterday 34% tariffs on all US products. So this is a tit for tat tariff war. Similarly, European Union is also announcing counter tariffs. Now, some
Right.
countries in the European Union will probably not respond in tit for tat manner, and one of them is possibly Britain. Second is Italy, because they don't want to provoke Trump administration. They want to be in close alliance with US economically or otherwise.
Correct.
US also introduced secondary tariffs that any country that purchased oil from Venezuela will have 25% extra tariffs. So situation is very fluid, but it has already got some domestic consequences. And let me tell you what are the domestic consequences.
Yeah.
$5 trillion of wealth has been wiped off in last 2 days
Oh my God.
from United States stock market. And it's not just one index, all the three major indices, Dow Jones Industrial Average, S&P 500, and NASDAQ, all dropped down finally to 5.5, 5.8, 6%. And in 2 days, Thursday and Friday, $5 trillion worth of wealth from US companies or companies listed on US stock exchange have been wiped out. As of today, United States Custom Services will be, charging 10% of tariffs on each import from any country. So it is going to have very ranging consequences. Economists are predicting that United States economy will go into recession fairly soon because once impose these tariffs, who pays? The consumer pays the tariffs, not the country that is exporting. Ultimately, they are passed down to consumer.
Yeah.
Now, if consumers have to buy high priced goods, they reduce their spending.
Yeah.
They reduce their spending, so it affects the economy. So Moody's has calculated that the chances of US economy going into recession has increased from 20% to 35% by
Oh,
the end of the year. Also, the expectation that putting these wide range tariffs will lead to increase in domestic manufacturing is misplaced. So I'll give you an example. US is very good in advanced manufacturing.
yeah.
They make planes.
Yeah.
They make, defense platforms.
Right.
They have what is called, you know, advanced CMC, computer operated manufacturing plants. Very good at that. But they cannot or they don't have the wherewithal to stitch clothes or manufacture shoes or grow bananas. It's a large agricultural country, but because of the climate issues and all, they do grow oranges, but they cannot grow avocados and bananas. So they have to import that from Latin American countries. If you put tariffs on that, well, the consumer is going to pay. Similarly, if you put tariffs on clothes and shoes, consumer is going to pay. And consumer is going to respond by buying less of the products, which will put economy into recession. Now, Trump's argument is that, he will replace IRS, Internal Revenue Service, by quote unquote external revenue service that will be collecting tariffs from other countries. And in the first year, they will basically collect up to 700 billion US dollars from other countries, and that will help them deal with the deficit United States has.
How
United States has around 38 or 37 trillion dollar in deficit, and they want to reduce that. But if you look at Trump's own past behavior and past performance, in the 4 years in his first term, the US economy accumulated $8 trillion in deficit. Why that deficit was there? Because there were tax concessions given to rich individuals and rich corporations. So if your own policies are defective, if you increase the money supply by quantitative easing, which means printing more dollars, you're facing the consequences of that. You are living on deficit financing and passing the debts to the younger generations. That has been a problem with US economy since they delinked the dollar from gold and started petrodollar from 1971 onwards. So ostensibly, Trump's actions are to correct the imbalances in US economy, but the means adopted are like 19th century means. And yes, it will have some consequences on US economy, but it is going to create a global trade war, and we have started to witness the beginning of it. Let me give you an example. There is an Indian company called Tata's. Tata's hold ownership of a couple of British car making companies. One of them is Land Rover,
Yeah.
second is Jaguar.
Yeah.
These cars are produced in Britain. And after Britain, their largest consumer market is United States. So Tata has decided not to ship any of the Jaguar and Land Rovers to United States for next 30 days because of 25% tariffs. What it will do? Yes, Tata's will not make profit, but it will idle the factories in UK.
Mhm.
And these factories employ UK workers. So the UK workers be laid off. So the secondary consequence would be impact on UK economy. What Trump is hoping that he can attract the manufacturing back to either United States or Mexico or Canada, but he has also antagonized Canadians and Mexicans with his various demands and earlier imposition of 25% tariffs. So, in essence, from a geopolitical and economic perspective, Trump administration 2.0
Mhm.
is a one trick pony. The only thing it knows is how to impose tariffs,
Yeah.
and it's making tall claims that it is going to right
Mhm.
the US economy and the deficits that are there in US economy and the trade imbalances US has with other countries
Mhm.
will be reduced in the long run. So they are saying that the consumers and citizens should actually bear the pain and suck it up, all these economic difficulties, but it is unlikely that it's going to go in the direction that is hoped for.
So,
First,
okay.
you have to have factories relocated in United States, or you have to friendshore or nearshore them in Mexico and Canada. Secondly, you need to have workers. Simultaneously with this, you are actually expelling the workers, some
Mhm.
of whom are either documented or undocumented from United States. So you would not have workers, and I can tell you that around half of the US population is on some kind of disability or welfare, and these people don't want to work. I mean, US citizens don't want to work in agricultural fields, picking cotton or picking,
Mhm.
harvesting oranges. They have to have seasonal workers come from South America. So if you don't allow those workers, who is going to pick the crops or harvest cotton or whatever? So it's a very complex situation. And by just reducing it to tariffs, Trump is being short sighted, but he does not agree that he has made a mistake or he is going in the wrong way. That has been his habit. If you
Yeah.
extrapolate from his business experience,
Mhm.
he seems to be a successful businessman, but his organization filed for bankruptcy 6 times. If you were so smart, why
Mhm.
would your business organization repeatedly file for bankruptcy? And what he had done with his Trump organization, he's doing to United States economy, and in turn that is going to affect rest of the world because United States is still the dominant nation economically with highest GDP of around $30 trillion.
So, were there any winners in this tariff war, or was it a lose-lose game for most countries?
There are no winners in tariff wars.
Mhm.
Generally, it is a lose-lose situation for everyone. It can sort of, lead to a global recession because of global trade war.
Yeah.
One thing that it will do is that it makes now WTO irrelevant.
Oh. So, that
Uh,
was the second question actually. Okay, how this is going to change the institutions like WTO and multilateral trade agreements.
So, as you know, that WTO came in 1995 after General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs, folded up and new organization came. Now, since his first term, Trump has been sidelining WTO, did not cooperate with, appointing new judges for the appellate process during his first term and was blocking it. Anytime any country files a complaint against US in WTO appellate mechanism, US starts acting out. So as far as US is concerned, their mantra is that we are right irrespective of whoever is on the other side. So that's not how international arbitration mechanisms work. But you cannot force a behemoth of a nation like United States to cooperate. So it is going to lead to irrelevance of WTO, which may die a slow natural death. It may lead to maybe more bilateral trade agreements or regional trade agreements that will supplement the WTO mechanism. Uh, I can tell you that country like India may not be affected in the long run because Indian economy is highly, resilient, and in the past it has absorbed the shocks despite apprehensions by Indian industrialists and all. Some of the Indian agricultural products would be affected. India exports a lot of shrimps to United States, so there will be, tariffs on that. Similarly, India's diamond cutting and polishing industry will be definitely affected. Uh, but Indian government is working with the United States to negotiate a bilateral free trade zone, and India has said that they will not actually impose counter tariffs. So the idea is engagement with the United States, not getting into a tariff war with the United States. In certain ways, India will be helped because US was buying all the, apparels and textiles and clothing
Yeah,
from India's neighborhood, mainly from Bangladesh,
yeah,
or for that matter, Vietnam and Malaysia and Sri Lanka. Now, the tariffs imposed on those countries are actually higher than that on India. So, Indian apparel, industry will become more competitive in United States at this point in time. And since India has started to purchase some of the defense equipment from United States,
yeah,
it may be a way to, balance the trade that Trump is concerned about. Uh, the trade advantage India has vis-a-vis United States is around $40 billion per year. And
yes,
that is just 1% of India's GDP. So Indian economy, by diversing our trade and having maybe a bilateral free trade agreement negotiated with two or three other possible candidate countries or organizations, like maybe with UK and maybe with European Union, because European Union has a good solid consumer block of around 450 million citizens who are, prosperous, middle class, and have purchasing capacity. So
yes.
that's how we can blunt in India the impact of these tariffs. So that is what maybe India needs to do. But one point I'm trying to make, it it requires some kind of chutzpah to say that in the major trade war
Hmm.
between United States and China, both their economies will suffer.
I see.
India should just stand as a bystander clapping on the side
Hmm.
because ultimately, if their economies goes down, it will help India
Great.
in the long run.
All right, all right.
We have a trade deficit with China to the tune of $100 billion a year. So we are subsidizing the People's Liberation Army to buy more equipment, more arms to the tune of $100 billion a year. And China is making desperate attempts to, placate India. and saying that they'll buy more stuff from India because they don't want to have a onslaught, economic onslaught from two sides. On one side US, one side India. So they are playing nice with India at this point in time.
Yes.
So the whatever the global dynamics is going on, uh, India can exploit that to her advantage, and it requires smart planning.
Great. Moving to my next question, what was India's initial reaction to the US tariff hikes under Trump, and how did it evolve strategically?
So look, India is a noisy country. It's a noisy democracy.
Oh, yeah.
So when you say what was India's initial response, it depends who you ask. If you
Yeah.
ask the opposition, they poo-poo the current government, say, well, Modi and Trump are supposed to be friend, and your ally and friend is imposing tariffs on you to the tune of 26%. The government has taken a very mature and very polished view of it. And they have said that, yes, okay, you want to impose tariffs, go ahead. We will work with you. We will negotiate a bilateral free trade area with you. We don't want to enter into a tariff war with the United States. But it doesn't mean that India should not respond in some kind. So if the policy planners are smart enough, they will also start their hedging strategies and start de-risking Indian economy from US economy. And when I say de-risking, uh, India has $240 billion worth of US treasuries. So maybe India should start this divesting that US treasury portfolio slowly and reduce the risk and exposure, and maybe buy more gold on international market. So that is one thing. Second is keeping in mind the unpredictability and uncertainty with Trump and his administration. India would be well advised to remove all its Reserve Bank gold holdings from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. India keeps its gold reserves in four different places. One is with the RBI vaults, whether they are in Nagpur or Delhi or something like that. But internationally, India keeps its gold diversified with the Bank of England, with a Swiss bank in Basel, and with the US with International Federal Reserve of New York. So India has around 833 metric ton of gold reserves, and India has been buying the gold. So one of the de-risking strategy would be to start removing the gold from New York or United States and place it either domestically, or if you want to diversify, use a Asian economic powerhouse or economic or commerce capital. So alternatives could be Singapore
Yeah.
or Tokyo. If you want to, keep it diversified and, mitigate risk of global geopolitical conditions,
Mm.
why hold all your eggs in one basket, which is Europe and Western alliance? So London, New York, and Basel, maybe you can remove all the gold from New York because you don't know how this guy is going to behave,
Yeah.
because they are very good at confiscating other countries' assets. I mean, a silly guy can go to court and file a lawsuit against a government and take a judgment from a very small court, and they
Mm.
freeze your assets.
Mm.
So you want to start dealing with that kind of thing, because when the economic and geopolitical interests clash,
Yeah.
US is very unpredictable. You cannot actually rely on United States. And the entire world is realizing that, including their European allies.
Right.
So there's new thinking, and India needs to play its card very well. Don't get into a tit for tat tariff war.
Mm.
negotiate a bilateral trade zone,
Yeah.
take the advantages of tariffs on China and other neighboring countries, including Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Vietnam for, labor-intensive goods, and possibly use this opportunity to buy more GE 404 engines and GE 414 engines for Tejas Mark II fighter airplanes. So that's how you balance the trade and not get into conflict with US while de-risking the economy
Right.
and reduce the number of students you're sending to United States because India pays around 8 billion US dollars in fees
Mm-hmm.
for the students to United States. So try to reduce the number of students and use all the de-risking strategies so that Indian economy is not intertwined and focus more on trade with other parts of the world, that is European Union, Britain, for that matter. Africa is emerging now. So tap the African markets rather than rely solely on US.
So, did India successfully leverage the situation to grow its own manufacturing base?
Uh, it does not happen in 1 week. Trump has introduced these quote unquote global tariffs only on April 2nd. It is an opportunity for Indian entrepreneurs to focus more on domestic manufacturing. India already has this Atmanirbhar program. It
Mm.
has brought some dividends. So, yes, when India decided that it does not want to buy toys from China,
Yeah.
India became very dominant in production of toys and are exporting. India became very dominant in exports. India is exporting actually arms and ammunition to 80 different countries. So, if you decide and determine that there's a national will, you can do those things for a country like India. I think India needs to go now into high tech areas, and have its own, AI platforms and sort of advanced car industry, advanced, you know, civilian transport planes as well as fighter jets industry. So India needs to aim high and try to plan that no country can use either tariffs or non-tariff barriers or sanctions to quote unquote punish Indian economy.
Nice.
In last 10 years, there have been some good initiatives, but they may not be
Sorry to
enough in the
interrupt you,
current
sir.
situation.
I have only 10 minutes of time left and I have got two more questions.
Go ahead.
So, can protectionism, as practiced by Trump, be justified in today's interconnected world? What lessons should India draw from it?
Uh, in today's interconnected world, protectionism is going to be counterproductive. A country like US cannot manufacture everything. I gave you the examples.
Right,
You
sir.
know, I mean, they can't even harvest their own crops. They have to rely on migrant seasonal workers from South America.
Mm.
They do not manufacture shoes. Okay. They cannot manufacture clothes at low end, and that's why they have to, use factories in low cost, labor intensive countries. Because if you were to do that, the wages will not support the economic model. In advanced manufacturing, yes, US has competitive advantage. The basic dictum in international commerce and trade is that you specialize in a few areas and you have trade advantage there and you buy from other countries where you don't have that advantage. Yes, US is a large economy, large country, but they don't have enough workers. That is the reality. India's situation is very different from US. India is a labor surplus country. So at this point in time, India can easily, or Indian entrepreneurs or Indian industrialists can start new production facilities and supply chains so that India becomes a manufacturing powerhouse. And this would be the opportunity. This crisis would be opportunity for India. I can't hear you. Maybe you are muted.
No, I'm not muted.
Okay.
I'm not muted. So, in a post-Trump world, what role can India play in reshaping the global trade architecture?
Look, you are realizing that all talk about global trade architecture was the talk of Western nations, led by United States. And when push comes to shove, United States is the one that is defaulting or bypassing the global trade architecture, which is World Trade Organization. So lesson is don't rely on global institutions. Some of them are totally irrelevant. I think we are entering an era where you'll have to bilaterally deal with each country on its own merit. And ultimately, the global rule that stands is might is right. So if you are economically dominant, you will be able to negotiate good terms of bilateral trade with other countries. Now, if WTO has to survive without US participation, because on one hand, Trump administration has sidelined WTO, on the other hand, Trump administration has not resigned US membership of WTO. And I brought this issue because China just filed a complaint with WTO. Now, interestingly, Trump administration did not impose tariffs on Russian Federation or Cuba for that matter. It's anybody's guess why not. You are putting tariffs on even your close ally like Britain or UK, but not on the Russian Federation and not on Cuba. Maybe WTO needs to think that they have been harping on, market economy, that Russian Federation is not. Maybe European Union will learn a lesson that, okay, you cannot just rely on United States on economic issues and security issues, and Russia needs to be brought into all international fora and not be shunned and not be sanctioned. So if WTO is going to function without United States, it may make sense to bring other countries that are trading nations but have been denied access to WTO by saying that they are not market economies. I mean, for all the talk about market economy, US is dominant in agriculture, but US gives actually billions of dollars of subsidy to US farmers
Mhm.
for supporting the agricultural industry. And in some cases, it pays farmers not to produce and keep land idle. So talk about free trade, free global trade, free market economy is a hogwash because all countries have adopted protectionism, including United States. That's the lesson you need to learn. And if you have to protect some of the industries locally in national interest, do that. On the other hand, you make actually manufacturing and Indian industries more competitive globally, raise the you know quality so that made in India is appreciated and respected all over the world, not like made in China, because that's like, cheap, low quality products. So while you are focusing on domestic manufacturing, don't disregard the quality because ultimately global consumers like quality.
So, what sectors in India are best positioned to benefit from the global realignment?
Look, India has an advantage in automotive industry Now, if US puts or US has already put tariffs, should it lead to shrinking of India's automotive industry? No. India should continue to work on and trade with other nations that are manufacturing cars. Maybe you need to export some of the automotive components to China, because we have a trade imbalance with China. We are just selling them raw material and commodities and things like that. So you have to get smart. Uh, there may be other, agricultural products you are selling to United States. If US puts 25% or 26% tariffs on India's export of shrimp and, marine products, you can sell them to China, because China is consuming a lot of poultry and agricultural products, soybean, and imports that from US. So it would be a time to boost India's agriculture and not just rely on wheat production and rice production in Punjab and Haryana. There may be other, crops opportunity there that you can sell to China to balance India's trade relations with China. Why we are subsidizing? And China doesn't want to have a trade war with every nation. So while they are working to mitigate the after effects of tariffs by United States, they are willing to work with India. So you have to start thinking smart and use every opportunity to promote domestic industry, whether that is
So,
agriculture or high tech.
only a little time is left. So, how can India ensure its trade policies are both geopolitically sound and economically competitive?
Well, it's important not to get into a tit for tat tariff war with any country
Right.
and have diversification of your trade relations with pretty much all over the globe. But ultimately, it comes to being self-reliant in every sector, so
Mm.
that nobody can sanction you, nobody can blackmail you.
Yes.
And this mindset that we are a developing country and we are the sixth nation in this field needs to go. Or we are the seventh nation, you have to be the first or the second nation in every field.
Yes.
There are a lot of things you can improve, especially the quality and the standards. And it can start with even educational industry.
Right.
You know,
Right. Right.
why we have to send these students abroad? Why can't you build capacity domestically in Indian universities? University Grant Commission can give recognition to more, you know, private universities, encourage quality private university, because amount of foreign exchange that is going to US, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, that can be saved if you have good quality institutions.
Yes.